I be sparking and rushing mad like inside the dark. Call me Bill Snatcher, just a brother for the rapture. I hang live, holding on strong, hard to capture. Extravagant, resurrect the track and it's militant. And I react like a convict and start killing. It's manifesting. The gods work like appliances, dealing in my cycle a lot.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explained here, bringing you guys another discussion for Boruto Naruto Next Generations, the manga. And for anime only fans, this is the time of the month where a lot of the content that we talk about on the channel is going to be spoiler heavy. So I thank you for your support. However, if you're still here, I'm assuming that you guys are all caught up with the manga and you don't care about me talking about spoilers. So jumping right in, I think we need to have a serious conversation about Jigen, not Isshiki Otstusuki, but Jigen. And in particular, I think we need to discuss whether or not the Boruto manga is making the right decision by introducing characters like Code, revealing them as being more powerful than Jigen, and having Ida, a character that it looks like she's going to be stronger than Jigen because of everything that is stated, that Amado seemingly had all these cyborgs, these human beings that he's experimented on that are going to be more powerful than Jigen. I think that we need to discuss whether or not this is actually a mistake. And I know there are a bunch of comparisons to the Android saga and Dragon Ball, or the Jinzo Ningen saga, which is the artificial human saga. I think that we can hold off on that. I can make a whole nother video on that. But what I want to discuss in particular here is whether or not this was actually the best idea when it comes to getting rid of Jigen as quick as they've done. So the first thing you gotta look at is that Jigen and Isshiki, two separate beings. Jigen was the imperfect vessel that was not able to draw out all of Isshiki's full power. That's a big part of the reason why Amado says under no circumstances can we allow Isshiki to be reborn inside of Kawaki's body, because if that happens, he's going to hit his full power. He's going to be unstoppable. There's nobody that can actually bring him down. There was still, at least in Amado's mind, a small chance that Naruto and Sasuke might actually be able to bring down Isshiki if he was reborn inside of Kawaki's body. A small chance was still a small chance nonetheless. And so the reason why I say this is that if you look at what we saw out of Jigen, Jigen's a very impressive fighter. The fact that he's keeping up with a perfect Sage Mode Kashin Koji, who is a clone of Jiraiya, that is a huge feat in of itself, given the fact that Jigen's body was at less than 10% recovered. So that lets you know how incredibly powerful he was. When he was Jigen and he absorbed some of the Ten Tails chakra and he got all these different boosts and amps from using the Karma Seal and progressing even further, we saw what he was able to do. Naruto and Sasuke, they more than handled him when he was fighting using the Ten Tails chakra, but then once he actually tapped into the Karma Seal, he absolutely bodied these people with that partial Otsusuki transformation. And you would think that if Code and Ida are stronger than that version of Jigen, that version there, because you would think that Amado would know that like Jigen has a Ten Tails there, he can absorb some of the Ten Tails chakra. Here's what the quantifiers would be in that aspect right there. I think that having characters like that could be stronger than that version of Jigen, I don't think it necessarily makes them fodder, but I think that it makes Jigen a wasted opportunity. Like in terms of when we've been introduced to him, I think we got introduced to Jigen very briefly in like chapter 16 of the manga, so he's been around for a while. But like when you look at how the anime's kind of built up Jigen, and you've seen how he's gone through and he's looked for these children, he's run this very complicated trafficking network to find children that would be compatible for using the Karma Seal, and what he did in the Rain Village and how that was implied there. I love what the anime's done with Jigen, but in particular in the manga, it really feels like he's just a bland character. It really feels like he's just this random bad guy that showed up, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, he was very powerful, but we're replacing him now. And I think to a certain extent, they have made Jigen's legacy fodder. I think that they try to make him somewhat relatable by saying like, yo, this whole time he's had a parasite inside his head. The parasite was actually an Otsusuki, and Isshiki was controlling everything, and you're supposed to be sympathetic to it. That would explain why Jigen just breaks down into tears, because his body was not able to handle Isshiki's enormous chakra volumes. I totally understand that aspect of it, but if you take what we know about him from the anime out of the equation, there's nothing that really makes you sit there and say, damn, I really feel for this guy here. Like, if you kind of go back and you look at what happened with Obito in the Naruto manga, like, you had enough about Obito's character that when you found out that Madara was manipulating this dude and you saw the flashbacks and you saw the gradual descent to where Obito was losing hope and Madara was just preying on his weaknesses, you felt for Obito. You thought his reason for starting the war at face value, which I've done a whole video, no one understands Obito, definitely check that out. But when you just look at the face value, you say, oh, his reasons for starting the war, it was absolute garbage. But you at least had a reason to actually sympathize for Obito, and it was beyond the surface level. With Jigen, we didn't necessarily get anything like that, and I think that's probably the biggest missed opportunity there. Like, all of a sudden we get this information in the manga that like Code was an Otsusuki worshiper. Where the fuck was any of that in the actual manga? Again, I don't care what the anime's done. We're talking about the manga continuity. And so I think that in a certain degree, we've gotten to a point where we're kind of fodderizing Jigen to an extent. And it's where Boruto's slowly starting to fall into that cliche of like the next villain's going to be stronger than the prior one. And I'm okay with it. I grew up on Dragon Ball, so I mean, I know that that stuff happens. But at the same time, you know, coming from a franchise like Naruto, where Boruto's technically part 2 to the Naruto franchise, because Naruto's volume 1 to volume 72, there is no Naruto Shippuden in the manga. It's all the same series. And so Boruto being the sequel to that series, to a certain extent, you expect the sequel to handle the villains with more care right there. And when you look at Isshiki, it's the same thing. We have headcanon to explain why he does what he does, but there's no real substance to it. There's no real meat beyond the surface level right there. And I feel like that's like the one thing. I feel like we're in a situation where before Code, we didn't have anybody that was getting any real heat as an actual villain. And I think that if you go this route with Code and you go this route with Ida, where they're characters that, in the case of Code, he has the potential to surpass this prior version of Jigen. I think that just as the anime showed you that relationship, we need some stuff that actually shows us the relationship between Code and Jigen, and Code and the Otsusuki clan, and how he worshipped Isshiki and the Otsusuki, Code and his hatred for Kawaki. We need to see some of that stuff actually kind of play out, because otherwise, if we do this, it's just kind of wasting the opportunity. Again, I know the anime is likely going to clean a lot of this stuff up, but Boruto is a manga. That is Boruto's job as a manga, is giving us the story first. And so I think that's one aspect they need to do, especially with the character of Ida. The same thing. We have an opportunity here with this character to actually make you sympathize for. A very strong character with no actual substance to them, they get very boring very fast. A good example of this would be, in my opinion, because Ikimoto draws so much stuff from the Dragon Ball franchise, which I've been told he borrows a lot of stuff from JoJo as well, but I've never read JoJo, so I can't speak on it, but I can say it's about Dragon Ball though. You know, if Ida is just this super strong character that's stronger than Jigen, and we get into another situation where it's just another random person shows up and is suddenly able to whip Naruto and Sasuke around, it's gonna be a very poor payoff, and it's gonna be just like how in Dragon Ball, where you had all of a sudden Kid Buu shows up, and Kid Buu ends up being this absolute powerhouse. There was no real meat to it. When you look at the prior arc, at least with Artificial Humans 17 and 18, the cyborgs, and you look at what happened with Cell, you could actually connect that stuff with Dr. Gero from the Red Ribbon Army saga of Goku, when Goku was becoming a young man after the first World Martial Arts tournament that he participated in, but before the 22nd World Martial Arts tournament. You can at least connect it back to that, and you could have some connective tissue to where it's like, okay, Dr. Gero, this is just a huge revenge plot. There was something else there. With the Namek saga, that kind of built on the whole revelation that Goku was a Saiyan, and that whole dynamic there, it was building on it. Buu was a terrible character, in my opinion. And so I think that when you look at this, we're kind of at that Buu saga stage for the Naruto franchise, in my opinion. Like, I think that if Boruto right now is the current 4th act of the Naruto story, I think that the way they've handled Jigen, the way they've handled Code, and the way that they could be potentially handling Ida in the manga, it leaves a lot to be desired, and it makes me want to say that these are wasted characters. However, I want to know from you guys, how do you guys feel about this? Do you agree with me that the power creeps in Boruto have gotten a little out of control and the lack of depth to the characters in the manga is very troubling? Let me know how you feel about that down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.